morning. Just wanted to mention a few things. I've been researching a few things concerning the Haarp, the high frequency altitude auroral research project, the facility in Alaska that is the main tool for the weather manipulation and modification. I found out some pretty interesting things. At least, what I thought it was interesting. Somebody linked me to a video of a man named Nick Begich, Nickbegich. And so I started watching one of his vids, and he's doing this lecture on Haarp and how it started and what the basis for it was. And the original inventor of the device, a man named Bernard Eastlund, BernardEastlund. So if you just YouTube search those guys, you'll get quite a bit of information regarding the Haarp program and some of the more technical side of what it does. And something that I didn't realize is that the brain operates on, it produces approximately 1 to 20 hertz, which is the operating range of the human brain. And the Haarp facility, when it sends its high frequency radio waves into the ionosphere, they pulse it. In other words, if you were to take a hammer and hit a nail, you would get the ping, but it would still resonate with sound waves that are almost barely audible, because it's that vibration continues. That nail is still vibrating. And so what they do is they send these high frequency signals at the ionosphere, but they pulse them. And so what happens is those radio waves, they end up returning to the Earth as low frequency waves. And so they can actually use those low frequency waves to do something called Earth tomography. And they claim that they're using it to try to find, hidden nuclear silos, and but what they're using it for is they can actually map, because those low frequency waves penetrate the Earth at a much deeper level. They can sort of map the interior of the Earth. They can find, because of I don't know if you've heard of something called ground penetrating radar. It's similar to that in the sense that they can send these low frequency waves into the Earth, and when the signals are returned, they can map out what's under the surface of the Earth. They can pinpoint natural gas reserves. They can pinpoint oil reserves. They can pinpoint ores, iron ore, gold deposits. I mean, the technology is so accurate that they can pinpoint just based on what the frequency reflections are. And some of the other, sort of things that came to my attention was the fact that these low frequency waves operate between 1 to 20 hertz. And they can use this to entrain the brain. So in other words, if the brain is put into an area that, an example would be when you're asleep, your brain operates at approximately 4 hertz. When you're fully awake and you're engaged, your brain is operating at approximately 7 to 8 hertz. Yeah, so it varies. But if you're put into a situation where you're bombarded with certain frequency waves at certain hertz, well, then your brain tends to try to operate at those hertz, or it entrains to those frequencies. And that's where they can manipulate emotion. So in other words, if you're at peak performance and you're engaged and you're operating at 7 to 8 hertz, well, if you're in an area where they're bombarding you with, 4 to 5 hertz, well, your brain entrains to that and it starts operating at that level. It's where you feel tired and lethargic. And that's why you get a lot of, I'm going to veg out in front of the TV. That's where you get, these certain television programs where people are so entranced. A lot of different things that can happen through the television. And I just wanted to mention that there is a number. If you Google this number, it's US 650-6148B2. That is actually a patent number for mind manipulation through monitors. Example would be TV screens, computer monitors. And this is actually a patent for a technology that manipulates the brain through these monitors because of the way that they pulse the signal. And a lot of it is nearly undetectable, but you get these effects through these pulses. And so the brain entrains to these different frequencies and behaves at those different frequencies. So if somebody can figure out exactly what frequency to set, let's say anger. Well, if the mass media, the mainstream media, if they're directed to release a video or release, strategic portions of videos to certain demographics, and then while they're releasing this information, these people are seeing this information on the television or their computer screens, and they're being pulsed with the hertz that will entrain their brains to become angry. And the Haarp technology, because Haarp can be used globally, they located it located it where it's at because it's very near to where the magnetic flux lines of the Earth enter towards the North Pole, and so it's where they basically re-enter at the Earth's surface, and they need to manipulate these magnetic lines, and once they can manipulate them, they can send the radio signals, the high frequency radio signals, into the ionosphere. But the technology that they have, and they have developed since Bernard Eastland was the patent holder for Haarp, and originally it was designed to be a ground-based Star Wars defense system. I don't know if anybody remembers the Star Wars missile defense system that Reagan wanted to do back in the 80s. Well, Congress said they weren't going to fund Star Wars, and so what they did is they call it every other name under the book in order to get the funding for it. And in fact, Congress wanted to fund Haarp. And so Haarp is, in reality, it was designed to be, pardon me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Haarp was originally designed to be a defensive technology in order to combat, intercontinental ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. Well, in reality, it's a ground-based Star Wars defense system. And so the technology that they've developed, because Bernard Eastland, who was the original patent holder and the developer of the technology to Haarp, he was basically removed when his company that he was working for was swallowed up by a defense contractor. And I can't remember the name of the defense contractor. It's like ESUP or something to that effect. But then that company in turn was swallowed up by Raytheon. And I'm sure everybody's heard of Raytheon. You know, Raytheon is one of the largest military weapons developers in the history of the United States. But Raytheon then swallows up the company that had swallowed up Bernard Eastland's original company that he was working for. And Bernard Eastland was removed from the project. And so they took his patents. Now, Haarp denies using his patents, but you know, the evidence is there to prove that that's what they're doing. And when they're talking about some of the energy levels that they're trying to use with Haarp, they're trying to get to the 100 million gigawatt. So that's like, you know, the way that the analogy that they use, or basically the technology that they're using and what they're attempting to do, is to pump enough energy into the ionosphere that when this bleeds over, and when the ionosphere releases that energy, it can create a lightning bolt that is like 3 to 4 Mount St. Helens volcano eruptions every 2 seconds, and it continues. So I give this example, and I say this to illustrate the type of technology that they have, and they have this pinpoint accuracy. So going back to the brain entrainment, you know, you look at all these, they call them cell towers, but in reality they're Gwen towers. And so these Gwen towers emit low frequency vibrations, or, you know, emissions and waves as well. And so using Haarp and the pulsing through the mind manipulation through the monitors and the Gwen towers, using all of these things in conjunction, they strategically release a certain portion of a video and to a certain demographic, and then they start pumping the low frequency waves to that particular area, and guess what happens? You've got riots in North Carolina. And, you know, people keep wondering why these people are destroying their own neighborhoods. Well, it's because that's where the frequencies are localized. You know, they're not pumping these frequencies to amplify these emotions in the outlying areas. They're doing it in those particular demographics for a specific reason. And so I wanted to mention some of these things to take a peek at. So if you have time, if you can, you know, look into Nick Begich and Bernard Eastland, and it will give you a lot of insight into the Haarp technology and what they're really using it for and what the intention is. So, again, I hope this helps, and have a nice day.